Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you are very well today. I'm very excited to welcome all of you Dynamites, our HLF and Delta staff, and our executives connected from everywhere in the globe. I hope you have had an amazing weekend, and I would like to welcome you to yet another amazing session of the Y and D. Now, before we go any further, may I please read to you the housekeeping rules? Now, the first one and the most important one, please make sure that you have your notebook and your pen or your iPad or your tablet to take notes. Now, remember, we are very good leaders, and a good leader carries a notebook and a pen to every meeting. Here's mine, by the way, so that I lead by example. Now, the second rule is that I would like to remind you to ensure that your gadget is on mute all the time unless you are asked to speak by the facilitators. In case you're leaving the meeting briefly, kindly switch off your camera and then switch it back on when you're back. Now, ladies and gentlemen, remember that the chat box is at the bottom of your screen and it is available to assist you. Now, if you have any direct questions, direct them to the chat box, and we have people, a team, a very dedicated team that will go through the questions and we will respond to you accordingly. Now, ladies and gentlemen, last week we had a very amazing session whereby we were talking about sexual violence, etc. But before we indulge into that, may we please just go through a prayer. Now, I would like you to hand over to our prayer leader for today, Mr. Farai. Please, over to you.
Hello, good afternoon, young and dynamic. I hope I find you MC. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Hello, am I audible? And read the book of Romans, chapter 8, and I'm reading from verse 31. And it says that, what shall we then say to these things? If God be for us, who can be against us? Now I'm going to skip to verse number 36 that says, who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or peril or sword? And let's also skip to verse 37, 38, and 39 that say, nay, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him that loved us. For I am persuaded that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come. And verse 39 says, no height, no depth, and we go on to the end. Now, so for our first prayer point for this session, we're going to pray exams or praying for candidates. So we're praying that God guides them through their studies so that they may achieve their desired results in the name of Jesus. So let us pray. Father, in the name of Jesus, Lord, I thank you for this beautiful afternoon, and I thank you for the session that is ahead of us. Lord, I thank you, Lord, for your children that are gathered here in this place, connected to hear from you and from your word through the designated leaders that are going to be coming through with their presentations. Father, I pray, thanking you, Lord, that you may guide us through as to our betterment and also for the betterment of our communities. Father, I also pray even for our exam classes and our candidates that are here connected and those that couldn't make it to the session. Father, we pray asking for your guidance and your leadership as they go through their exams and even as they study. Father, may you please guide them through the content that they're studying so that they may be able to study what's relevant and what's required in the exams in the name of Jesus. And I also pray that you also help them to even understand, and not just understand, but be able to comprehend and apply all that information in their different phases that you set them out to lead and conquer. In the name of Jesus Christ, I pray. So I'm going to end this prayer point with a reminder from the book of 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. And it says that God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. So dynamite, God, through the rest of the week, having that in mind. Whenever you feel afraid or whenever you hesitate, that is on your mind. Remember, God did not give you a spirit of fear, but of power and a sound mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Farai, for an amazing prayer. Thank you very much again. Now, as I was saying, Dynamites, last week we had a very amazing session and we had a very amazing conversation with Auntie Rejoice. It was about the awareness and better understanding of sexual violence, sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment. Now, this week we are having yet another amazing session, and this is the continuation of the session we had last week. So I hope last week you had an amazing session. I hope you took notes, and we are going to continue where we left off. Now, this week we have Miss Ruva Chiwara from the Gender and Advocacy Function, and she'll be guiding us through the continuation session of the session that we had last week. Now, specifically this week, we'll be talking about dissecting gender norms and their impact. And over to you, Miss Ruva. I hope you have an amazing session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kabila. I appreciate the very warm welcome. Good afternoon to everyone. I do hope that when we have this session, by the end of it, we've all learned something and we all have gems that we can take away from this. So today we will be discussing dissecting gender norms and how they affect us at large, both men and women, because there are very many things that occur due to these stereotypes and the way we view ourselves because of how we present in terms of our gender identity that can really affect all sorts of things in terms of opportunities, in terms of our relational abilities. So we're going to unpack that today. So thank you. If you will please, shall I share the screen or will you be sharing the presentation for me?
Please go ahead and share.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm hoping everyone can now see my screen. If anyone can just confirm for me.
Yes, your screen is okay.
Okay, that's great. So let's go on with the session. So dissecting gender norms. So what we're going to do is we're going to really assess what that means to us. We're going to define terms so that we all are on the same page and we can understand what's going on. And then we're going to work hard to understand each other so that we can be more relational with one another and we can just get along more and we can understand where each of us are coming from much better, especially as it concerns our gender identities and how it makes us show up in the world and the preconceived notions that go with that. So let's go ahead and start the session. If you do have any questions, do feel free to put them in the chat box. If it is something that you would like to speak on out loud, feel free to request to unmute yourself and go ahead. Let's go ahead. So what we're going to do is we're going to define misogyny because this is something that affects each of us, men and women, girls and boys. It affects us in every facet of our lives because it really can dictate how you show up and how you don't show up. And it can really affect whether you're your authentic self or whether you're presenting yourself in the way you think you should. So we're going to start by defining that term so we all understand what it is we're talking about and how it affects us. So misogyny can be defined as the hatred and contempt or prejudice against women and or girls. So there we have a bit of an origin for where it came from and how we dissect it. And it really just speaks to having the mindset that anything that is feminine or conceived to be feminine within a specific culture or society can be looked down upon or looked at negatively. If you are subscribing to misogyny, then it's looked as less than, less valuable, less important. So misogyny can show up in so many different ways. In young people, it can be displayed through sexist jokes, where you might say something like, oh, you're arguing like a girl, or you're getting emotional like a girl would, or you are going to the gym, so that means you're going to look like a man, you're going to be too muscular. That's how it can show up in those stereotypes that we hold based on someone's gender identity. They're ideas that we feel like they should subscribe to just because they may be a man or a woman, a boy or a girl. So that's how it can show up just in our daily lives, objectification of women, victim blaming, especially in situations of sexual violence, of any sort of violence, where you ask someone, oh, what were you wearing? Where were you? Why were you there when this happened? If you weren't there, then this wouldn't have happened. Instead of putting the onus on the person who's perpetuated the crime, you often find that that onus is put on the victim to not be in the wrong place at the wrong time. So that is a part of misogyny. Gender-based violence, experiencing violence solely based off of the fact that you are a woman. So maybe it might be looked upon as maybe okay to treat you in a certain way that is not beneficial to your health or your safety. That is an aspect of misogyny. And it can affect someone's ability to move safely and comfortably through the world. So this has a negative impact on gender relations as it perpetuates the harmful stereotypes and discourages gender equality. As we know, if you look down upon someone just based off of how they present in the world, it's going to be very difficult for them to then garner respect, for them to be able to be safe, to be authentically themselves, because they may have to be on guard due to those preconceived notions. Then we have cyber misogyny that can show up in sending explicit messages to people without their consent, or commenting explicitly on someone's picture or someone's post, objectifying someone on the internet, and it can then become harassment, like what we covered in our last session, how you can speak to someone in a way that is going to make them feel less than or objectified or take away dignity from them, and that is a form of misogyny. Then we do have workplace misogyny, and this is when we have the ideas that women should only perform certain roles in the workplace, like maybe being a personal assistant only, or maybe not progressing past a certain part in the organization because there might be that belief that women are too emotional to handle the hard things or too emotional to make the tough decisions. So these things can hinder someone's upward mobility, and that is a form of misogyny that can be very detrimental to society at large, because we each have contributions that we can make. So when you start someone in that way, it can really have negative outcomes for everyone as a society. So that is a way that workplace misogyny can show up, or it can also show up in men not wanting to take roles that are generally perceived as feminine. Like there is the preconceived notion that men shouldn't be nurses, or men shouldn't participate in the beauty industry or the design industry, even though more often than not they do thrive in those areas. But societally, sometimes there might be that idea that, oh, if you work with women's hair or if you work in women's products, that means you must not be straight, or you must perceive yourself as more feminine, you're not a man, you're not strong, you're not muscular. So that is a form of misogyny, because someone's job should not define who they are as a person, and people should be free to pursue their passions no matter what they are. So that's a way that misogyny can show up in the workplace. And culturally, it can show up in terms of pushing boys to, oh, sorry, I think there's a question.
Sorry to interject. There's an echo on your sound. Are you able to disconnect the audio and reconnect again so that we can hear?
Okay, let me do that. An echo. All right, let me. Is it still there?
Yes, the echo is still there.
Is it my voice or is it background noise?
It's your voice. I'm sure there's a connection challenge probably. Do you have one computer in your room?
Yes, it's just the one computer. I'm not connected to anything else at the moment.
Okay. Do you mind if you can quickly disconnect and connect, so that we can see if there are improvements?
All right. So let me log off and then I'll be right back.
Okay. Thank you so much. As Ruvarashe is connecting back, let's type what we have thought and how you are looking forward to to learn from today's session. If you are valuable, what are your key takeaways from our last week's session, and so that we can is prepare for today's session. Okay, and anyone in the chat box, you can type the learning outcomes of the things that you have learned from last week's session, as we are waiting for what to come back and take us further.
Right.
Share at least the 3 things that they have learned from last week's session. And we have some prizes, so we'll take.
Oh, I don't see anything from my end in the chat box. Ah, I can see. Okay, Tanaka sent something in there. At least Tanaka was the first one. And I can see Miss Ruva is back, but I'll just also read from my end what Tanaka has said. Tanaka Tianani. My greatest takeaway from last week was about mutual consent from both parties before they before they engage in any activity. Okay, that's okay, Tanaka. I will not expand on that. I think Auntie Rejoice did a very good job with that. And then we have obvious Tanaka Masimba from Use It. He says sexual harassment can take various forms. It would have been nice if you had mentioned the various forms that it takes, so that we are all reminded. Ms. Msharo, I think those are the 2 comments that we have received from my end. So I'll hand over to you as I see Ms. Rova is back online.
Thank you so much, Pastor. I'll reach out to those participants. Over to you, Ms. Rua, so that we can check if your sound is back again. Can you call for us here?
Okay, can you hear me properly now, or is it still echoey?
Wow, loud and clear, please.
Okay, that's
check.
great. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen again with you guys. Okay, please confirm if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so let's pick up from where we left off. We were now on cultural misogyny. Just a reminder, any questions, do feel free to put them in the chat box or raise your hand if you would like to unmute. So cultural misogyny, as we said, it is the idea that boys should pursue their education while maybe the girls should stay home and focus more on learning child rearing techniques or learning how to run a household rather than pursuing higher education. This is a form of misogyny because it doesn't really give the young girls or the women a chance to choose the path that they would like to in life. So the idea that they're not allowed to pursue their careers can be a hindrance, and it does hold them back, and it can be very negative. And it can affect men negatively as well, because then if they would like to pursue something more homely, they do not have the freedom to do so, because they have to question, what will society at large think of me if I want to pursue something that is perceived as feminine, like domestic labor, or maybe pursuing cooking, or any sort of homemaking, design work in the home. This can be perceived as less manly. And this is a form of how misogyny can show up culturally and in the home and in our minds as well. It can affect the life paths that we choose. It can affect the decisions we make in terms of our career goals, our career aspirations, or having them in the first place. At this time, I would like to ask Ms. Chinga if she can share with us some examples that she may have witnessed herself or faced in terms of these 4 types of misogyny and how they show up in the world. If she's connected, I would love to hear from you how you've experienced this in practical settings or in passing. Ms. Chinga, are you connected?
Okay. Yes.
Okay,
I think I'll just briefly put up my video because it seems connection is a bit of a challenge. But hello to everyone. It's great to be here, and thank you so much, Rua, for taking us through all those definitions. But as I give examples, maybe we also need our participants to give us examples in terms of the sexism that they've witnessed in young adults, in girls, and cyberbullying examples. And even for you, it may not be at the workplace, but it may be even in the institutions, in the tertiary institutions that you are. So So can we have examples in the chat box? But I will share, maybe I'll start with cyber bullying that we have witnessed in terms of women experiencing cyberbullying by virtue of them being women. If you go to the popular pages, especially for men and women on social media, you will notice that a lot is happening. We have examples of women who tried to stand in as a president, as members of parliament, and a lot was said. But you don't get to see the same things maybe when it comes to men. In young adults, the concern is around not only young women's mental well-being, but also young men's mental well-being. We've seen a surge in cases of suicide by young men. So it's probably something that we need to address, that it may not be 50-50 in terms of who is the most affected when it comes to men and when it comes to young women, but we are seeing a rise, and that's really concerning. So let's have examples of how we have experienced the discrimination based on your sex, based on you being a young woman, based on you being a girl, in families, in communities, and even what we have seen nationwide. Rua, you can continue.
Thank you so much, Ms. Chenga, for those insights. And I am looking forward to hearing from all of you in terms of the things that you may have experienced, or even if you didn't experience them yourself, if you've observed them, things that you have seen. I'll hand over to the MC just to let us know, is there anything forming in the chat, any examples that we're getting?
Not yet. I think we're still getting examples from last week's session.
Okay. Oh, feel
Yeah,
free to
yes.
read those out as well. I am curious to hear them, if there are any new insights.
From last week, the testimony mentions that it is gracious comments about dress and physical appearance.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
I think gracious Danda also learned that it is kind to dress properly and decently. This was from last week's session.
Yes.
Yes, I think those are the comments that we are having in the chat box.
Okay, thank you. We'll just give you guys more time to think on it and really dissect that. Maybe you might need a few more minutes. So in the meantime, we will go ahead and continue. But I hope that we're all on the same page. Feel free, again, this is an open space. And I do want everyone to feel free to share their experiences, whether it is in the chat box or whether you want to unmute. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. This just gives you an overview of what misogyny looks like globally and in Zimbabwe. So we'll go ahead and start with the global approach here, where close to 90% of men and women hold some sort of bias against women. So that is quite a scary statistic. I'm sure we can all agree that there are all these preconceived notions by such a great part of the population about what it is to be a woman and what it means to exist in this world as a woman. About 50% of the world's men and women feel that men make better political leaders. So this is what I was talking about before concerning how you might feel like women shouldn't undertake such heavy duties because they couldn't possibly make those decisions, because there's the stereotype that we're emotional, that we can't think straight when our emotions are heightened, and therefore we shouldn't be in positions where we have to make important decisions. So this can affect our learning outcomes, our career outcomes, and our aspirations in general. So this is something to think about in terms of how it can affect the world at large. And over 40% feel that men make better business executives and that men have more right to a job when jobs are scarce. So this is very scary. And then we go on to the statistics concerning intimate partner violence and just gender-based violence in general, because there is a rise in femicide happening, especially after COVID, when everyone was trapped at home. There was a rise in domestic violence cases and gender-based violence in general. So that is something that's being affected in the world at large. So that's something we need to think about. And then you can see all the different statistics, how it affects from young girls all the way up to older women. No one is really exempt from the outcomes of misogyny, and we can see how it can affect the men as well, in that they then bear the burden of having to make all the decisions and not necessarily having a partnership. They then bear the burden of having to be the financial provider. It's looked upon them where it could easily be a partnership. It then becomes one person carries one load, the other person carries another, and there's no meeting in the middle. So we can see how this can affect both parties, and that it really is negative to put all that weight on one individual. And then we see 24% of parliamentary seats worldwide are held by women. It just lets you know that although we are making progress, because it's better than it was before, it is slow, and it is a journey that we are all undertaking as each of us are understanding the different effects that misogyny can have on the world at large. And then we see in Zimbabwe how it affects women. According to the Women's Academy for Leadership and Political Excellence, there's a decline in the number of female candidates from 14% in 2018 to only 11% this year. So we see how misogynistic mindsets can affect our ability to prosper, both men and women, because it affects the learning outcomes, it affects the career prospects, it affects how we view ourselves each individually. And then we see 40% of women aged 15 to 49 have experienced physical or sexual violence by an intimate partner, which is a very scary statistic, because then that lets you know that 1 in 3 women in this country have experienced that physical violence. So when you look around and you see a group of women, you could think every third woman, one of them is probably currently going through that or has experienced it at some point in their life. And that is a very scary statistic to think about. So we see how misogyny can affect us as the world at large, and we can see how it directly affects us in our country now in Zimbabwe, for those of us who are connected from Zimbabwe, of course. And we can see how it affects the globe in general. And it is negative, and it is very, very heartbreaking when you see the types of cases that it can cause in terms of violence, in terms of affecting someone's ability to feel safe in their own skin. So that's why we're having this talk now, to let you all know that it is a global issue, but we can work together to fix it. I hope we're all on the same page. Are there any questions in the chat box, MC?
No, there aren't any questions, but I think it would be important to note that in the case of previous experiences, remember did indicate that some boys say she will not work for a company with women as top officials, like CEOs, because apparently women cannot lead.
And you can see how that can negatively affect any working environment, because you're losing out on people who could potentially benefit the company itself and society at large just because of these stereotypes. So thank you for pointing that specific statistic out. I'd like to hear again from Ms. Chinga if you can relate to any of these things personally or in the work you've done with men and women. Do you see these numbers showing up directly? Is this an exaggeration, or are we on the right track with these numbers and these percentages?
It's sadly, it's actually not an exaggeration. And before I talk about other examples, there's a comment in the chat box that this young lady, when she started doing sciences at A level, a male teacher approached her parents and said that she shouldn't continue because girls tend to struggle with sciences. So we see those biases in terms of, and it can actually affect somebody's psychological well-being. They may end up thinking, no, I shouldn't continue doing sciences because I am a girl. And the reason is I am a girl. So I think we have seen that. So in terms of the numbers, you can see it's scary. And also just to add that women have experienced, in Zimbabwe, we actually don't have clear statistics around women who have been killed by males for various reasons. Yes, we have males being killed, especially for infidelity, but for women, it's all sorts. You'll be shocked that is for ritual reasons. It's also because of suspicions of abuse. It's for any number of reasons that somebody tried to rape her and they failed, or they continued and they want to hide evidence. So we have a huge number of women being killed. I think from 2021, we have in excess of 500 women who have been killed in just what we call intimate partner violence. And sometimes it's assaults that get out of hand. At other times, it's intentional killing of women. And it affects all classes of women, the working class, the women in the rural area, the woman working or staying in the mines, in the farms. So that's the dire situation that we have for women, and it's not only Zimbabwe; it's actually even global.
Yes, that's so true. Just to speak to even when you were speaking about how women are dying at the hands of intimate partner violence, there is the statistic right here. I'm hoping you can see my mouse on the screen there, that shows you that more than 5 women or girls are killed every hour by someone in their own family. And that is a very scary idea, that the people that are supposed to be closest to you can actually end up being perpetrators that do harm against you in some way and even take your life. So that is something that we need to look into. And that is why these conversations are extremely important, because we want to see these numbers go down completely to zero. We don't want to have to look at such high percentages for violence against anyone in general. So this is important to look into. Thank you so much, Ms. Chinga. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. Unless there are any questions in the chat box or comments at this time. Are there?
Sure. I think we can continue.
Okay, thank you so
Maybe
much.
before you do, Rua, just to add that sadly or concerning, there is a research body called ZimFact. What they do is just subject to whatever comes out on in our media to whether it's a fact or it's not. So they published a study in 2023 which established that most young women find being beaten by their spouses acceptable.
Wow, that is very scary. That is very scary. And that touches on a topic we will be visiting in the slide later, internalized misogyny, and we will get to that and we'll unpack that and what it means and how it shows up in society. So thank you for bringing that up. It is very important to address that. Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide, which is what is misandry. So this is essentially the opposite of misogyny, and it speaks to the discrimination against men in terms of negative stereotypes of what you think of or what you perceive of men to be due to misogyny. It can frame your mind into thinking that men are dangerous, men are scary, men are not to be trusted, men are absent fathers, things like that. Those stereotypes that go on with this just because of how misogyny is affecting the world at large, then this is the response to it. So it can negatively affect men in that they're already perceived as threats without necessarily showing that they are. So misandry in youth and adults may manifest through generalization that all men are violent or untrustworthy, dismissing men's experiences with mental health issues or physical abuse, because men get abused too. And because of that, because of these ideas that we have that men are strong, men are masculine, some people might laugh at that idea, or some men might feel like, oh, who can I tell? How can I tell anyone who will believe me? Because I'm the man. I can't be beaten up. I can't be mentally abused. I should be the one who's taking the dominant role. So belittling men who express their emotions. So the idea of misandry can create an environment where men feel unable to express themselves freely, leading to mental health issues and problematic communication in relationships. This is when you have mental health issues and suicide rates going up and depression and anxiety. And because it's not being addressed, and men might feel like, I can't speak to anyone, I should figure it out within myself. They won't seek the mental health resources that they might have, and they might internalize it. And this can lead to lashing out at the people around you because you've not expressed yourself. You've not had an outlet to speak on your emotions in terms of what's going on in your life now, or the things that you've been through. Maybe you've been through abuse. Maybe you've been through some sort of violence in your past, or you're going through it right now. You might not feel like you can speak about it because you are a man and you're supposed to be strong. You're supposed to be tough. So this is how it can show up in the world today. But I do want to open our minds up to consider that these views that we consider misandry in this instance might just be a form of how misogyny shows up, in that although it is perpetuated against women, it still holds up stereotypes against men. So it may benefit men in some ways where you're seen as strong, and that's good for people to perceive you as strong and tough and you can handle everything. But at the same time, when you need help, that's not how you want to be perceived. You want to be allowed to ask for help. You want to be supported. You want to be, in an environment where you can feel safe and not have to feel like I have to be on guard because I'm the protector. So if something happens, everyone's looking to me to fix it. We need to create an environment where that's not the default, where we come together and we support each other as communities and society at large, so that not one individual has the burden of being just one thing. So that's something to consider as well. So now we move on to the next slide that addresses misogyny and internalized misogyny. So misogyny, we've spoken about how it can manifest through negative stereotypes against men as well, in terms of how they view themselves and how they're viewed by women as well, because women can also be perpetuators of misogyny. It's not just men, because it's deeply ingrained in a lot of societies that we grow up in, that we're comfortable with, we can end up perpetuating it even without meaning to. So typically, if you presume that, only women are supposed to be in the kitchen and cooking and performing domestic labor, men can't be stay-at-home dads. And if you see that, now all of a sudden you're saying, what's wrong with him? Something must be off with him. Is he really a man? Is he lacking testosterone? Is he weak? Why is he wanting to be around his kids all the time? Why isn't he in the office? Why isn't he bringing home money? Why isn't he, I don't know, in the gym building his muscles and things like that? So it can affect how you feel about yourself as a man as well, because your self-esteem is really crushed. Because if you don't look the certain way that a man is supposed to look, if you're not muscular, if you're not tall, if you're not strong with a full beard, a full hairline, all of a sudden now everything, you have to step back and think, am I wrong? Is there something wrong with me? What can I fix? You always feel like there's something wrong with you. I see there's a hand up. Please feel free to unmute. Go ahead. Oh, sorry. Are you able to unmute, or would you like to maybe type your comment or question in the chat box? That might be easier if you're not able to unmute. MC, please check on the raised hand I'm seeing now, because I'm sure that's a very important contribution. Yes.
I think some of the co-hosts might be able to help us help she or he unmute for the question. I don't know
Okay.
how it might be.
We have given them the right to unmute, so if they are not able, we can encourage them to type and then the MC will read out.
Okay, that could work as well.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So we'll just continue when you are ready. When you're able to unmute, just raise your hand. Oh, I hear feedback. All right. I think it would be better if you maybe type your comment or your question so that we can address it, because all your thoughts are important and we do want to hear from you. We want this to be as interactive as possible. So then we move on to internalized misogyny. Now, this is a form of sexism that women harbor against themselves and against other women. So it perpetuates those stereotypes that we are expected to live by in terms of the things set up with misogyny. So the idea that women should be feminine, should be soft, should be quiet, seen and not heard. These are ideas that other women can perpetuate to each other. So if someone laughs too loud, you often see someone saying, don't do that, you're a woman, you're a lady, stop that. If you sit in a certain way, no, don't sit like that, you're a lady, sit like this. If you're too open with your opinions, or if you're in the advocacy space, people might be like, oh, she's loud, she's very abrasive. Or if you express discontent with something, people might say, oh, you're difficult to work with. She's not very feminine, she's not very soft. And this can be perpetuated by other women as well, telling you to, no, just be quiet, don't speak like that, speak like this, soft soften your voice, appeal to people. If you want to be listened to, you have to be soft, you have to be sweet, you have to hold back. So those ideas can be very damaging to someone because not everyone is naturally like that. And we should all be allowed to show up as our authentic selves. So when you put those constraints on people, you limit them to only being A or B. And that can be very detrimental to someone's mental health, or especially self-esteem, the way you view yourself. If you don't fit into the soft and feminine framework, then that means, oh, something must be wrong with me. How can I fix it? What can I do? Instead of just embracing the version of you that you are and just improving just in general in terms of, your education, in terms of your ability to speak to people and relate to people, just interpersonally. You might think, oh, I've got to change everything about myself because everything's wrong, because I'm not soft and I'm not quiet and I'm not demure. I have to be this way if I'm going to be a real woman. So that can be very harmful, and it can cause things like anxiety and depression and body dysmorphia. There's so many things that can come from that, where you look at yourself and you don't really see what's there. You start seeing all your imperfections. So that's how internalized misogyny can really manifest itself. So internalized misogyny is made up of two main elements, which is self-objectification and passive acceptance of gender roles. These components are linked to a plethora of negative outcomes, including identity foreclosure, psychological distress, like I mentioned before, disordered eating. Let's say if we say a feminine body should look a certain way, it should be curvy, or you should be small and petite, you should be, then if someone doesn't fit into that, they might not give themselves the nutrients they need daily, because they might starve themselves because they are saying, I'm too big, I need to look like this if I'm going to be a real woman. That is very harmful and very detrimental to someone's well-being. And that's why we need to have these discussions. I wonder, maybe, Ms. Chinga, if you could share if you've seen this in the young girls that you've worked with, or even with the older women, because there's no age limit on when you can experience this or when you can actually be a part of this. Is this something that you've witnessed too? And what are usually the outcomes in these cases?
Yeah, sadly, we have witnessed it, especially where then girls become subjects or become victims of serious gender-based violence, such as early unions. We have seen older women orchestrating early unions for girls as young as 12, as young as 13, and we have seen even girls around 13, 12, 14 giving birth, some with dire consequences where they end up losing their lives. So it's then said, when we have women either supporting such biases or not taking action because of their culture, what they think is right, how they were socialized, and because of the patriarchal nature of our society. So it's really sad, even where women whose names they have been profiled so that they occupy certain positions, you then realize that women may not be able to support other women. They would rather support a man, and we then have other biases in terms of the structure of our leadership ladder in our families, in our communities, and even in the nation. I was doing a research just to find out of nearly 200 chiefs that we have in our country, how many are women? And you'll be surprised that it's only 4. And Mat South, thankfully, has the highest number. It is 3, and there's another one in Mashonaland East in Mudzi. And in terms of even having had women, this is actually a new term. It used to be just headmen or head persons. Now, by virtue of our new constitution, we only have less than 10% of the whole number being women. So we still need to do a lot in terms of just looking at perception, practice, and even policy.
Oh, I think she might have cut off. She did mention network challenges. But if you do have a chance to join back, hopefully I'll call upon you again. But thank you so much for bringing that to our awareness, like how it can affect us and how women can also be their worst enemies in situations like this, where we perpetuate, those negative stereotypes, and we put other young girls in danger, trying to maintain gender roles and trying to be more effeminate in the eyes of what it means to be a woman in the lens of misogyny. So we do have to address that and how it can put other women in danger while you're trying to appease the male gaze. It is very dangerous, and it is something to be addressed. Feel free, if you have your own examples, please do feel free to put them in the chat box or unmute and share with us what your experience has been or what you've witnessed in your life or in someone else's. In the meantime, we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide. So now we talk about the impact just in general of what misogyny and internalized misogyny does to the world at large. These gender-based prejudices can lead to a lack of cooperation. You'll see that's when we have a lot of people talking about, oh, the gender wars, like it's men against women, men versus women, and there's this contention. And then we can't actually come together as a society. We can't actually come together as men and women because one is on one side, one is on the other side. Then we have the people in the middle also fighting amongst each other. So when we perpetuate these stereotypes, these negative viewpoints of each other, all we do is draw further and further apart. We don't have that mutual respect for each other. And it's not good for society. It's not good for future generations. And it's not good for everyone who's here now because it limits our safety, it limits our freedom, and it limits our ability to respect each other. So that's why we have to have these conversations and why we need to unpack that and try and release that. Even within yourselves, try and think about the stereotypes you hold and how you're contributing as well. And do your best to move away from that so that you're not contributing to these negative statistics we're looking at and these negative outcomes for other men and women and boys and girls. Because if you continue to perpetuate it, you make the problem bigger. But if you fight against it, we can come together as a collective. And that's really the ultimate goal. So overcoming these prejudices involves educating each other about gender equality and the harmful effects it has. The more we know what harm we're doing, the more we can cut it where it is and we can stop it from happening altogether. So we have to work together to do it. Neither one of us can just do it alone. It is important to have that unity with amongst each other. So misogyny and internalized misogyny can contribute to societal norms and pressures that may shape how individuals feel they can express their sexual orientation and identities. However, it's important to clarify that these prejudices do not directly determine or influence an individual. So it doesn't mean because this is the stereotype, you immediately have to fit that mold. You can make the decision to be exactly who you are. You can show up as your authentic self. Because when you do that, you fight against that misogyny and the internalized misogyny, and you put it to the side. So the more we do that, the less prevalent it is, and the safer it is for everyone in general, and the happier you can be because you can express yourself the way that you'd like to. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide, which is impact on gender relations. So the impact on self-expression, like we've been discussing basically throughout the session, is the fear of misogyny or internalized misogyny can make people uncomfortable to be themselves. It can make people hide who they are and show up as only one version of themselves that doesn't fully encapsulate the person that they are. And that's not how we want to really show up. We want to be free, to be who we are so that we can be honest with each other and the people around us. So it contributes to discouraging men from expressing anything other than traditionally masculine behaviors and identities. So let's say you want to dress a specific way, you want to wear a specific color, but oh no, this color is for girls, this color is for women. Now you can't do simple things like dressing yourself have to be think pieces and really anxiety inducing just because of these gender stereotypes. And that doesn't make sense. So we do have to address that, and we need to try and work towards eradicating that because it's not beneficial to you or to me. So the impact on perception and acceptance. Misogyny and internalized misogyny can perpetuate harmful stereotypes about certain sexual orientations and identities. For instance, misogyny and internalized misogyny can foster negative attitudes towards lesbianism and gay men or any man who doesn't conform to stereotypical heteronormative expectations. This means that if you don't fit into the mold of a man should be big, strong, aggressive decision-making, and all these things, the minute you shy away from that in any way, the minute you're shorter than the average man, the minute you're skinny, the minute you, I don't know, it can even go into complexion where it's deemed like the darker you are, the tougher you are. These are negative stereotypes that affect people as individuals, because you don't get to see who they are and they don't get to be who they are because they're trying to perform. And when you're trying to perform, it's going to affect you and it's going to affect the way you perceive yourself in a negative way. And that's what we're trying to get rid of. So heteronormativity and gender roles in terms of a woman should be in the kitchen and a man should be at work. But what if they want to swap? And now we have other people saying, oh, look at what they do in their house. And there are these stereotypes that household is dysfunctional because it doesn't look the way you think it should look. That's when we have negative outcomes for their children, if they have children now, because imagine how they're going to feel to know that this is how their parents or their caregivers and guardians are being spoken about. It's going to make them also not show up as their authentic selves. And it trickles down. And all it does is negatively affect the people involved, the people around, the people who are hiding who they are. And now they're saying, oh, well, if I do this, look at how they'll talk about me. Then we won't be able to be our authentic selves. And that's just how it can affect society so negatively, in that nobody's showing up as who they are. Then intersectionality, it's also important to consider intersectionality in that it's interconnected to nature and race, class, and gender, these things that perpetuate misogyny. We need to think, how is it affecting class structures? How is it affecting people's economic outcomes? But you might not hire someone because they look a certain way or they speak a certain way. And you're thinking, if you are a woman, you're supposed to talk and look like this. Therefore, if you don't talk and look like this, I won't hire you. And that's very negative, because we all deserve opportunities. If we've done the work that we need to get them, if we're in the positions that we need to get them, then we should be able to be accepted in those spaces. But when we have these stereotypes and you don't meet that mold, immediately it can cut you at the ankles and you can't progress. And so that's something that we need to get rid of. Maybe if Ms. Chinga is now available to speak, if she's able to unmute, you can talk to us about how these different factors have affected either your own work or the people you've worked with, and how they show up in the workplace, especially in the advocacy space. Oh, I'm hoping she is reconnected, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
And
yes, just
are you able to? Okay.
it
So
doesn't
maybe
give sound.
Oh, she doesn't have sound. Okay. So maybe if you can type it in the meantime, and then when you're done, we can read it out in the comment section. And again, guys, continue to comment, leave your own experiences, your questions, all of that. We want to address all of it. So feel free to share with us. So in conclusion, while misogyny and internalized misogyny don't directly determine who you're going to be or who you should be, they can still affect how you see yourself. And so if we eradicate them, we can make safer, more open environments for everyone, and we can progress more, because when we show up as our authentic selves, we can accomplish so much more, in that we can show people what it is that we have to offer, what it is that we are good at. We can play at our strengths rather than trying to play at the mask that we're wearing. So that's why it's important to let go of those preconceived notions and really be ourselves, be open, be respectful, and allow people to live in dignity. Don't try and pull people down because they're not fitting in your idea of what a man should be or what a woman should be or how we should show up. You show up as yourself and allow people to do the same is really the main point of this. And be respectful to others when they're showing up as their true authentic self, the same way you would want that respect from someone else. So that is it. Those are our slides. I see there are a lot of comments. I don't know if they are questions or if they are contributions to what I've shared, but I will stop sharing my screen at this time, and I'll hand it over to the MC to address anything in the comment section, so we can answer questions at this time or hear your experiences.
Thank you. Thank you very much for an amazing session. I think we could address some of the comments that are being made in the chat box. The latest one that I'm seeing is from Dokoza. She says, or he, sorry, when most Africans see men cooking or cleaning, they start saying "Udliziwe," which might translate to that he has been bewitched. So I think these are some
Okay.
of the cultural norms that we have. But also
Yeah.
going back to I think we asked people to refer to their past experiences of miso misogyny. Sorry, my pronunciation might be,
Oh, it was
but
spot on, don't worry.
Kushaya says that there are some people in power or maybe some lecturers who ask for sexual favors to offer good grades to some women, and this is hatred because in some cases the women actually deserve good grades or to be offered a certain type of job, but they have to offer certain sexual favors to get what they deserve in a way. So I think that's
Oh wow,
hatred towards women.
that is also the form of sexual harassment and sexual exploitation. And if you are dealing with something like that, you should report it immediately. Don't feel the need to acquiesce to such things. Do report it so that you can find the remedy that you need and you can get the support you need.
I think so too, exactly. And we
Mm,
also had a comment still on the past experiences or maybe experiences in general that we have
mm,
general in community.
mm,
Mary did say that there is something that's common that happens, cyberbullying, revenge porn.
mm,
Maybe when you have a partner and maybe things are going well,
mm.
there's this thing, revenge porn that's happening
Mm,
now.
that is a form of trying to degrade someone, trying to bring them down a peg, because of that negative feeling that you have towards them. And that is something that we need to stop. So immediately when that happens, also report it because it is illegal and you can take legal action, be it criminally or civilly. So that is important to note as well.
I think so too.
Mm,
Respect had a question. I think she or he was raising a hand. I don't know if they're still connecting now.
yes,
I think this would
mm,
be an amazing opportunity to address whatever he or she was saying.
mm. If you're still here, please feel free to unmute or type your question or comment in the chat box so we can address it. I think we'll wait, but in the meantime, we can continue on with the other questions and comments.
Oh, the other comments. Okay, we had
Mm,
also a comment from Gracious. Or before that, I think there's just a
mm,
comment from Bushle that says it becomes hard to report lecturers
mm.
who are asking for sexual favors. What if they are not heard, or how do you go about it? I think it's a question from Bushle.
Okay. All right. So in that case, I'm hoping is Miss Chinga available to address this? She does have a poor connection, so maybe she can type a response in the chat box. But you can take legal action against them because that is a form of sexual harassment and exploitation. And I know there is that fear of what if I'm not believed, but you have to take the first step if you're going to make any sort of change in any case. Because if you don't speak, imagine how many other people are experiencing that. So when you speak up, you embolden other people to speak up and you can come together. And then that can be your way to get the justice and the resources that you need. But if all of you stay quiet, then it will just continue to go on. So at least when you speak up, you open the door for others to also do so. Because often when someone is exploiting someone in that way, it's not just one person. There's always other people behind there who they're doing that to. So, just keep that in mind as well. I hope that helps. Mm.
I hope it helps
Mm.
too. We also had a comment from Gracious earlier when we were talking about misandry.
Mm.
She says she thinks it is vital to groom every child properly, regardless of their sex, whether they're male or female.
Mm.
So she says this will change patriarch, patriarchal ideologies.
Mm.
So I think that was an important comment to note as well.
I do agree with that. If we raise both little girls and little boys the same way, then there isn't that idea that because I'm a girl, I do this, because I'm a boy, I do this. Everyone should equally be able to cook and clean and work on a vehicle if they need to and mow the lawn. It shouldn't be this job is for this and this is for that. We should all be capable as human beings to take care of ourselves. So that is an important point. Thank you for bringing that up.
I think the issue of being able to report might be coming up very often. I think we
Yeah, I'm
might need
seeing.
to address it in a much clearer or way because there is a comment that says there are circumstances whereby they cannot speak up, especially in college. So I don't know
Okay.
what.
I would say, Ms. Chinga, if you are available, please do point us to how we can address these things from a legal standpoint. What do we do when there's a lecturer who's trying to do a quid pro quo situation where if you want to pass my class, you have to give me this? What are the legal steps we can take? What are the resources? If someone doesn't want to take the legal route, what are the other resources available to that individual? Where can they go? Who can they speak to? It's very important that we address that because no one should have to be in that situation. And so we do want to get you the help that you need as soon as possible.
I think so too.
Mm.
Well, I think while we're still waiting on my end, I think we talked about females or women sometimes being enemies to themselves. I think it also occurs in the case of boys. If I was to make an example in my case, I think at school these days, I no longer play music out loud. I wear headphones because sometimes males are expected to listen to a certain type of music, some violent music, maybe
Okay.
with some vulgar words. But so if you play music like the music I listen to, maybe out loud, sometimes you become judged. They just say, turn off that, we don't want to hear it. So it kind of becomes weird. I think males are expected in a way to listen to a certain type of music, and
Mm.
it becomes a problem if you don't enjoy that kind of music and you have your own. I think it can become quite a problem as well. In my case,
That's
past
true. Yeah,
experiences, I think
yeah,
so.
you do have to be mindful about the things that you're internalizing. So of course, enjoy your music all you want, but don't make it a situation where you're only internalizing things that talk about negative outcomes and negative stereotypes against one gender or the other. You really should just um, be open to things that are going to help you progress. Take in things that are going to be positive to your spirit, to your mind, that are going to make you feel better, not worse about a situation, you know? So be mindful about the things that you internalize, be it movies, be it music, be it, I don't know, art, anything like that. You have to be careful what it is you're taking in because it affects you. Mm. Mm.
In the comment section, I think there's also another comment about reporting. It's like if
Mm.
girls report, they are somehow seen as bad people by the society or by other women who end up accusing them of seducing somehow. So
Mhm.
sometimes they do mention that it's really hard to approach anyone because of fear of being judged.
Okay, I get that. That's another form of that internalized misogyny, where instead of addressing the problem that's at hand, you want to put the blame on the victim rather than putting the blame on the perpetrator. So that is something that we need to let go of because you need to find the support system that you have within the people who will agree with you, within the people who support you. And if you can't, there are going to be resources available to you in terms of if you look up your women's shelters or women's organizations, you can go to them. You don't always have to go to the people close to you, especially if they're going to be detrimental if you speak to them. Find those people that will listen to you, that will support you through it. Be it a friend, be it a trusted adult or a trusted lecturer. Sometimes it's not even someone who you would usually think of, but you know, if I go to this person, I know I can get help. So feel free to do that.
I think so too.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another comment that says that systems in colleges are mostly biased against students, so much that if you just expose or report or something, in a way they make you fail your grades in a way. I
Oh,
think
okay. Is this something that's common? I'm very concerned to hear this.
very common, very common.
This is something that I think what we'll do is as we continue with these sessions, because I think they're more left, we'll really put together the resources so that we can address each and every one of these problems because we do want to immediately take care of that. Since that is something that seems to be going on, it is something we're going to address directly in our following sessions so that we can provide the specific resources you can go to, or we can directly give you those pieces of help or whatever it is that you need. But yeah, now that we know we have that feedback, we know we can go back, look at the drawing board and fix it. So thank you for bringing that up. That's very important that we know that.
I think so. I think it would be a good idea to prepare something for the next session that would be.
Mhm.
There's also a question that says, is sexism and misogyny the same?
Oh, okay. So misogyny is the main umbrella term. And then sexism is it's a part of it. So it's a trickle down. So if you're misogynistic, you're going to be sexist. So it falls under it. It's just a category of it. So you know how we can say music, but in music there's hip hop, there's R&B. So it's kind of like that. With misogyny, there's different forms that it takes, and sexism is a part of it. So I hope that answers your question.
I hope so too. There's another question that's from Luke that says, how do you draw the line between positive reinforcement and misogyny, deriving from the feminist movement and the battle against the patriarchal way of thinking? Should I repeat it again?
No, it's okay. I think the best way to look at it is when someone is approaching the situation, like let's say you feel like someone is attacking you in the feminist movement, step back and see like what is it that they're asking for? Are they asking for a right, or are they just trying to perpetuate a stereotype? And then that's how you differentiate it. Because if it's not actually addressing a specific situation, then you know that this person is just wanting to, because sometimes you'll always find outliers in any movement that want to take things to the extreme point. So look at what it is that they're trying to do. Are they actually trying to advocate for a right, or are they just trying to antagonize? And if it's just a case of antagonizing, then that's something that you don't address. You don't, because the more you give steam to people who like to do that, the louder that they are. So don't platform people who perpetuate those things. But step back and look, what is it that this person is trying to accomplish? If they just want to antagonize, then don't address it.
I think there's one last comment that I would like to read out. It's from Dumisani. It says, he thinks that people should address the issue of having only male-dominated SRC. I think this is the case for schools, and the presidium is always male, as women are considered weak.
So that is something that it's getting better, although it is a slow process, but there are now more programs in place that address finding women in those circumstances that are there, trying to promote education in that way, trying to really reach out to girls and young women to pursue those types of things. So there are those programs in place. It is slow, but the more we have these types of discussions and the more we are open with each other like this, the closer we get to closing that gap.
Okay, are there any closing remarks? I think we have come towards the end of our session.
Okay, I think whatever other comments and questions, if someone could just put them together and we can always address them in the next session. But thank you all for being so interactive. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate each and every one of you. I'm hoping that you all took something from this that you can take back home with you, you can unpack, and you can relearn and reshape. So thank you all. Back to the MC. Thank you, Kabelo.
Thank you very much. And also for those who have those further questions, you can reach out to the number 07777222526. Should I repeat it again? It's 07777222526. Now, thank you very much, Miss Ruva, for an amazing session that you gave us today. It was really insightful and quite wonderful. Thank you very much. Now, if I would give the weekly announcements, please, ladies and gentlemen, remember to like, comment, and share Young and Dynamic posts on Facebook page and Society channel. And also remember that the Global Intercessors platform is open 24/7, so remember to connect anytime to pray for yourself, your loved ones, and the nation of Zimbabwe or Lesotho or whichever nation you're connecting from. So for now, from me to you, this is goodbye. So we can meet next week, same time, same place. I hope you have an amazing week and